One.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Ray Tampa podcast. Our podcast offers bold commentary on various subject matters with a laser-like focus on the truth. My name is Ray Tampa, and I'm the host of the Ray Tampa podcast. We have in our studio two talented and intelligent gentlemen, Mr. Russell Cato and Mr. Jamie Wilson III, my co-host. There have been lots and lots of discussions and articles concerning the historic gas plant development deal between Ray's Hines team and the city of St. Petersburg. Many community leaders and organizations have felt the need to publicly lend their voices to the concern. Some of the comments are very compelling. However, it is up to the members of St. Petersburg City Council to decide whether the city should proceed with the deal as it is, offer to renegotiate the deal, or simply vote no to the project. City Councilwoman GINA Driscoll is quoted as saying simply and profoundly, quote, "We have a responsibility to get this right," end of quote. According to our guest, Mr. Ron Diner, there's a lot to get right about this deal. We're going to let him explain. Mr. Diner, welcome to the Ray Tampa podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right.
Glad to have.
Mr. Diner, before we begin, how about sharing with our listeners a little information about yourself, such as where were you born, educated, and information about your professional background?
Sure. I was born in Buffalo, New York, but I moved here in 1973. And my background is I went to Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, and I have a master's in business from Columbia Business School in New York City. A couple of other things I would mention relative to our conversation today, which I think is germane to the conversation, is that I founded and then ran for 30 plus years Raymond James Affordable Housing. And as a result, I have a great deal of experience evaluating multi-million-dollar deals and acting as a fiduciary for others people's money, which is very relevant to this. The other point I think that is important is that working with Pinellas County Schools, I founded Lunch Pails, the lunchtime mentoring program that focuses on helping the kids who need us most, who come from challenging backgrounds. And I've been a mentor myself for 8 years, and I currently mentor a little boy at Lakewood Elementary School. And I think that this has given me a perspective on the great needs of our community.
Okay, great. We really appreciate that information. Mr. Donner, please share with us at least 5 aspects of the deal that are in need of being renegotiated or eliminated from the deal as it now stands. At least 5 aspects, please.
Okay, well, I'll be glad to do that, but I wanted to, first of all, just provide a little bit of background for those who maybe have not listened in before, because there seems to be a lot of people who think that this is a done deal. So just a little background. The Tampa Bay Rays currently play baseball at Tropicana Field on a lease, gives them the stadium and the parking lot for 30 years, and they've got 3 years left on the lease, and they want a new stadium. And they've negotiated a deal with the city to build a new stadium and to develop the land, which is currently the parking lot. The city council, as you mentioned, and the county commission, they are going to have to vote on whether this is a deal that we want to do. They're the checks and balances. The stadium was built in 1980 with the hopes to attract a team. And at that time, the area around the stadium wasn't very well developed. Baseball started in 1998, and the area was the same. And there was no real economic growth nor any job growth for at least 10 years. The growth seems to me started about 10 years ago, and what seems to cause, or what was the factors that have allowed that to happen, were things like the Dali Museum and the other museums, the pier, the condos on Beach Drive, and then all the restaurants that got developed on Central, and then all the apartments. And I'd say COVID had an impact too, because people moved here because it's a great place to live and work and play. They could take advantage of all the same benefits, the beaches, the sunshine, and no income tax. So it was not the raise that has really made the city blossom. And that's where we are right now. The gas plant property is extremely valuable, probably the highest large developable property on the East Coast of the United States, or perhaps in the country. And what this means is that while we love baseball and we wanted to stay in the Tampa Bay area, this property is very valuable and ready for development with or without the raise. So with that in mind, what is the current deal that, as to which we're not crazy about by a long shot? First of all, the city has to come up with $700 million, which includes, because they're going to borrow the money, including interest, to pay for their share of the stadium. The city is going to give up $400 million worth of real estate taxes on the stadium land. This is a private company that's going to build this business, but they don't pay real estate taxes. And then in addition, $500 million. The team and the Rays virtually have an option on all of the rest of the land, the 64 acres that's the parking lot, to buy it for $105 million. We think the land's worth at least $600 million. So that's $1.6 billion. When it comes to the county is also going to put up $600 million, including interest, to pay their share, and they're going to give up $200 million in real estate taxes. So they're going to put up $800 million. So the city's going to be forsaking $1.6 billion of resources, the county $800 million. So what would be fair, which is really to address your question, what are the changes that would make this a fairer deal? Since the city and the county are paying for half the cost of the stadium, it would seem that what would be fair is for the city and the county to share in half the revenue from the stadium. And we also ought to share in the profits if the team is ever sold. The team's going to be much more valuable once it has a new stadium and it has 30 years on the lease. We should share in the profits if they sell the team. The team should pay fair real estate taxes.
Right.
Ray, I don't know about you, but I'm paying my share. And thirdly, they should pay fair value for the land. Why would we sell this land for so much undervalue when this property is prime? And although the Hines Group is a very successful and major developer, we could strike a deal with somebody else on a fair basis. Two other items I would say with regard to the deal is there's a lot of people who've written about affordable housing and how there's a commitment for 1,200 units of affordable housing in this deal. But if you look at the details, Ray's Hines can opt out of building any affordable housing at all for a penalty of $25,000 per apartment unit. That's like $30 million. They're buying the land for $500 million under value, and they're committing, and they can buy out of the affordable housing for a small amount. In addition, we have no control once they do this deal. That Rays and Hines don't actually have to develop anything. They can sell the parcels off when and where they want, and the people who buy it could sell them off to someone else. So we don't have much control. So I'd say those are in answer to your question, those would be 5 of the items. Hopefully, what I would like to get to, and I'll stop here though, is why does this all matter?
Go on.
Okay. So, I was on a call today with some of the people who have a similar concern. And what I said to them, and what I'm saying here is, so what? Why do we care? I'm suggesting we care because what matters? What matters to people who live here, work here, raise their kids here? What matters it's what matters to them that makes St. Petersburg a big, small b, small l, big league city. Shouldn't that come first? And that does not mean necessarily baseball. if you live, for example, in Shore Acres, or if you live in some of the other areas of this town which have been experiencing a lot of flooding, what matters to these people? I think that if I live in an area and it's not flooding too much, but it does flood, what matters to people are how are we going to address the flooding issues? The city has more than $760 million worth of stormwater projects on the books, none of which I believe is funded. But in any event, they have told, I've seen reports that it's going to take 75 years to address all of these issues. How much faster that could come if we save this $1.6 billion? And what if you live in a lower income area part of town? What matters to you? I'm suggesting one, housing. So why wouldn't this deal guarantee some housing? But at the same time, if we took $250 million of this $1.6 billion, we could form a housing trust that could be used to underwrite the cost of additional housing, and it could also be used to help people fix up their homes and would provide good jobs. What about education? If you are living in a lower income area, listen, I'm concerned about the education of my kids and my grandchildren, I should say. But I'm saying if you live in an area that in certain parts of town, it's got to be even a bigger concern. And what we could do we could set aside a couple $100 million or maybe less, and we could fund a couple thousand scholarships for kids to go to St. Pete College so that they definitely or likely will have a chance to get a good job. We have too many kids who are not moving on beyond high school. We could invest more money to help in the high schools to make sure the kids know about opportunities. What about healthcare? I've talked to the free clinic that has a healthcare facility because we've got a lot of people who don't have health insurance. And so alternatively to going to, say, the free clinic, people go to the emergency room. St. Pete Free Clinic said to me that with money, they could provide for more of such facilities. Sending people to the emergency room is not good for them, and it's not good for any of us because all it does is drive up our cost of insurance. Preschool programs for kids. We could help to make sure that there's money aside so every kid has a chance to go to preschool and there's enough money to pay so that the kids could stay there all day. So a single mother, for example, would have a chance to go to work or to also go back to school to get a good job. These are all kinds of fresh foods. We could help to underwrite the cost for a few dollars compared to all these costs, underwrite the cost of some markets that would help to make that happen.
Okay, I'm going to hold at this point because you've given us a lot to digest, a lot. And I want to give my co-host an opportunity to ask questions about some of the things you've said. You gave us a laundry list of priorities that should take precedent over the stadium deal.
Exactly.
And I can appreciate everything you said. But before the laundry list, you talked about why this deal is not a good deal. The land purchase is way below appraised value or market value. And so on and so on. So I'll leave it at this point. But my co-host, do you have any questions?
I just have a statement. I agree with everything he said because it's like they're giving basically, once again, the city away. I mean, for the land, based on your numbers and what you discussed, that is ridiculous giving it away that low. And it should be properly looked at by qualified people. And if our city is lacking with those individuals, I mean, you have that background. You just mentioned you have that background. But if they're lacking with individuals, they need to pull in who they need to pull in because it affects the citizens. I mean, this is all about how the citizens, St. Pete's, going to benefit. Right now, I don't see anything beneficial. And the fact that they could renege on that building those affordable homes, that's probably already in the plan to do. Because they're only going to what, 2,500 per unit?
25,000, but it's still a small percentage.
It's still small.
Yes,
yeah,
correct.
Because they're getting the land for 500 million, when it's probably worth, well, we know it's worth prime real estate.
Yeah. Russ?
Yeah, well, I'm at a point here because when you kind of texted me the other day about who was coming to speak on the Tropicana area. I had a chance to go back and look at the plan that has been offered to the people. And their plan is called a master plan. And it's a coincidence that you asked him to do 5 aspects. That master plan that they are doing, they have 5 steps to their master plan. So I'm concerned now because he's saying this is a bad plan. And then there are some people saying this is a master plan. Now, if I look at the history of the Tropicana development, for as Black people are concerned, because I'm a gas plant resident myself, I haven't seen any good thing coming out of this. I'll be honest with you.
Russ, that's a powerful statement.
Yeah, I have not seen anything coming good out of this. None. So when I'm looking at that, I'm looking at the ownership. Who are the ownerships here? The Pinellas County, City of St. Pete, Rays, and Hine. So listening to you, of those 3, the power control is with Rays and the Hine group. Is that right?
Well, if we do this deal, all the power is with them. And we also don't have $1.6 billion that we could focus on all, all the many needs that we might have. And as I've alluded to, the promises that were made at some point in the past with regard to the residents who were in the gas plant area,
Right.
to spend the money on things that will help people move forward
Right.
with jobs and education.
That statement you just made, and Russ, give me a second here.
Go on.
About the residents that lived in that area, I want to point out to you, Ron, Russ lived there. He lived in the gas plant area. Russ told the 2 of us some months ago that his mom was the last to leave the gas plant area. And that he felt her having to leave that area contributed to her death because she lost her sense of community,
Yes.
her friends, her sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And she was in a state of depression, and he felt that that contributed to her death.
Sure.
So in writing a letter to Mayor Welch early on, it was, I have the letter right here that you wrote. It was a letter suggesting that the Rays and the Hines team get the nod from the city to do the development. But this is early in the process. I wrote a letter, Russ wrote a letter, and then a pastor wrote a letter. We were the only 3 African Americans to write letters of support. Now, what I'm getting at is there were no numbers such as what we have now. At that point. There were no numbers. We supported Rays Hines over the Sugar Hill group out of California.
Yes.
But based on these numbers, mine, and I'm not speaking for Russ or anybody else, but my support has shifted. My support has shifted. So we have to get it right. Per GINA Driscoll, they have a responsibility to get it right. And as I stated earlier, you gave a lot for them to consider.
Well, let me just add on to what you're saying about getting it right. You are right, I think. I mean, for sure. The city council, and I'd like, if we have time, I'd come back to the county commissioners, but they have an obligation. They have a fiscal and a fiduciary responsibility, just like I did, to make sure that they're doing what matters for their constituents. And what they need to do is do their own independent study, as was mentioned. I mean, they should do their own appraisal to see what this land is really worth. They should have a list of all of the community needs and see where a stadium would rank on that list.
Right.
They should look at what this impact of the city taking out its credit card and borrowing $700 million is going to have on the city if an emergency comes along. There's that and many other things. In fact, if you went to nohomerun.com and read our full analysis, there's a full list of what the due diligence items they should do. That's exactly what I did thousands of times. That was my obligation to my investors It's the same thing the city should do. They should not feel pressured to do this quickly. My understanding is the first time they're going to meet as a whole is toward the end of April. And then they're going to have theoretically a meeting in May. It's ridiculous. If I was on the city, it's impossible. They've got to slow down and take their time. The team's not going anywhere.
Good. I interrupted you, so you want to go with your question now?
No, what I'm going to say is, I like what he's saying, but my concern, when I look at whoever developed this master plan, and you're saying that this should go slowly, I think what has happened is somebody has already put that in. You know, I looked at the 5 steps, and it's a funny thing, Ray. Here's how they approach it. They call it, if I'm not mistaken, holistic approach. You understand that? Meaning you're looking at everybody.
Mhm.
But when I read this thing, Ray, it seemed like they know they got it together. And what he is saying seems like it's already in the works. That's what I'm scared of. Is this thing already in the works?
Well, the answer is nothing is in the works until
Okay.
the city council decides to vote for it, tells the city that we need to renegotiate it, or decides that if the Hines are not interested in either of those, is to develop the property on their own. Hines is a major developer, but you mentioned about master plan. Hines is hiring a company called Gensler, if I've got the name right. They are a master planner, developers hired to lay out the property. What we say in nohomerun.com is the city could do it themselves. They can hire a master planner, lay it out, and then sell off the land, because in that case, they'll have complete control.
Right.
So nothing is really done. It's just based on the fact of where the city is and talking with Rays and Hines have hired someone to at least draw some pictures and plans of what they
That's what
might
I
do,
heard.
but it's not, it's not a done deal at this point in time by a long shot.
Jamie?
So they're doing their due diligence. We need to do our due diligence here in the city. You know what I mean? Because we're out of our element. So we need to bring in the proper people.
Yes, and I would tell you that something else I blogged about is that the city councilmen have the right to bring in outside experts to help
Right.
them, to do
Mhm.
what the things that I've talked about, to help them evaluate 130 studies that have done about stadiums, all of which show they do not drive any economic value or create jobs. They need to understand this thing so that they can, I keep repeating myself a little bit, but to keep the stadium in the right priority when it comes to what matters to the city. Where is this stadium? How could it be above housing or flooding
I
or
agree.
education? When all this money is here and this property is ready to be developed right now, with or without this team and with or without baseball.
2 important things you pointed out in a presentation that I heard earlier, weeks earlier, where you said 3% of the people surveyed in a particular survey expressed their interest in the Rays, as opposed to 8% for Sunken Gardens, or a higher percent for the Dolly Museum, or a higher percent for the Pier, meaning visitors coming to this area, they were coming not because
Not
of
for-
baseball.
Right.
They were coming because of the restaurants, the museums, the beaches, et cetera, et cetera. Only 3% express an interest in baseball. So why are we spending huge amounts of money in the manner it's being spent? My concern is we're giving land away.
We're giving the
We're
city away.
giving all this money away,
Yeah.
and we have no control over the finished product.
And only a dummy would agree with something like that.
A dummy,
A
dummy.
dummy.
Well, see,
Okay, Russ,
that's what I'm saying. No control. And I'm gonna ask you, because you know better than anybody. How can you have more control than Ray's Hines? If they're the leading people here, who is going against them?
Well, the city has made this proposal. And by definition, if we do what they propose, Rays and Hines will be totally in control.
That's what I'm
But
saying.
again, this is up to, that's why we've got a city council. The city council is supposed to be looking out for what matters and to say, if they review it and it come to the same conclusions we have, is to say no. And also with regard to those statistics you were mentioning, the county is coming up with all this money, $800 million. The money that they're gonna put up, the 200 million is they're gonna lose in real estate taxes. But the other 600 million, they're gonna borrow over 30 years, $20 million a year for 30 years, and they're gonna take it out of this tourist tax that we have. And that 20 million represents 22% of the tourist tax for the next 30 years. And their own Visit St. Pete Clearwater study shows, as you mentioned, that 40% of the people who come here because of the beaches, they come here because of the museums, the restaurants, and only 3% come because of baseball.
Right.
I've written to them and saying where is your fiduciary responsibilities? Why, if you own a hotel on Clearwater Beach, you want people to come to the beaches. Why would you want to have them spend 22% to send them to a stadium 22 miles away that's only of interest to 3%? It doesn't make any business sense. As a business guy, I'd reject the county's deal out of hand.
We have what you call in St. Petersburg a herd mentality.
Yeah.
A herd mentality
Follow.
when followers,
That's-
when you have 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 people saying, hey, great deal, let's go with it. You got a whole lot of other people falling in line because of the herd mentality. They're not understanding the nuances of this deal. They're not understanding the financial impact in the long term to our city.
Right.
Giving away all that land is ridiculous.
There's no one who I have talked to, or if you read any of the people who are in favor of this stadium and articles in the paper, and I've responded to a lot of them in blogs I've written on thehomerun.com, there is never any facts on the other side.
Right.
They're not saying anything to support their positions.
Yes.
Right.
And what they're doing is they're dismissing the facts that are being put out by people such as yourself, people such as Devron Gibbons, Pastor Sykes, Andy Oliver, the League of Women Voters, the Southern Poverty Law Center, just dismissing all the information put out by these individuals and these organizations, only because they're trying to ignore the facts. You know, dismiss the facts, ignore the facts. But I want to say to you, Ron, thanks for being here because you've given us a lot. I go back to your laundry list. That was a lot. And then the point you made about the land deal, the stadium financing, and the fact that we don't have this and we don't have that as part of the deal. Thanks. That was very important information. To my co-host, thanks to the two of you for a job well done each and every week that we do this show. And to our listeners, we certainly appreciate you tuning in to the Ray Tampa podcast each and every Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. on 99.1 FM, The Berg. And we want you to please check us out in the future and go to YouTube and take a look at all of our videos on YouTube. And with all of that being said, thank you and good evening.